been adopted only because of the single veto of the permanent member of this council who is perpetrating that conflict. Russia claims that its invasion of Ukraine is in self-defense. This is absurd. Russia's only act of self-defense is the vote they have cast against this resolution today. Make no mistake, Russia is isolated. It has no support for the invasion of Ukraine. History will record how we voted today and which countries stood up to be counted in defence of the Charter and the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. The United Kingdom stands steadfast in support of the Ukrainian people and will hold Russia accountable for its aggression. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the representative of Norway.
President, Norway voted in favor of the draft resolution. We deeply regret Russia's veto. Preventing an ending act of aggression is a direct responsibility of this Council. A veto cast by the aggressor undermines the purpose of the Security Council. It is a violation of the very foundation of the UN Charter. Furthermore, in the spirit of the Charter, Russia as a party should have abstained from voting on this resolution. On Wednesday, as we sat here in the Council chamber, we could see the shocking first images of what now amounts to a full-scale Russian invasion of a free and independent UN member state. We can only imagine the hardship the people of Ukraine is going through. With their tanks, missiles, bombs, planes, warships and cyber attacks, the Russian Federation's aggression not only violates the independence, sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, it also constitutes a serious breach of international peace and security. Russia has disregarded the very core principle of the rule-based world order that the United Nations has stood for since the Second World War. Let me be absolutely clear. Norway insists that the Russian Federation immediately, completely and unconditionally stops all fighting and withdraws all of its forces from the territory of Ukraine. Russia must respect the principles and purposes of the UN Charter. Norway expresses full solidarity with Ukraine and the Ukrainian people in the face of Russian aggression. Indeed, we already see the dire consequences for civilians, with casualties and injuries of large numbers of children, women and men. We fear increased suffering in the time ahead, with potentially large numbers of casualties and extensive destruction of civilian infrastructure, such as schools, medical facilities, water and electricity plants. We see fighting unfolding in and around urban areas. We are deeply concerned about the long-term and protracted harm to the civilian population caused by such warfare, including by the use of heavy explosive weapons. We already see mass displacement. This will only increase, together with trauma, family separation, and missing persons. The situation is a tragedy. Conflicts in Ukraine.
Instead, it has launched an unjustified and unprovoked attack on Ukraine. An attack that continues today to rain death and destruction on Ukraine and its people. We condemn these actions outright. In casting our vote today, we do so in full solidarity with the people of Ukraine. This Council has a responsibility to act in the face of conflict, to protect international peace and security, to uphold the principles the world agreed upon in response to the utter devastation of the Second World War. This is not a responsibility that Ireland takes lightly, yet it is one that we were prevented from discharging today in spite of the clear and declared will of the great majority of this Council's members. Mr. President, we deeply regret the use of the veto today by the Russian Federation. The veto is an anachronism which has no place in today's world. The use of the veto to block Council action is always unacceptable. Its use today in blatant defence of military aggression is reprehensible. Ready to support further measures if Russia does not reverse course. Mr. President, the unfolding horror of recent days is a tragedy for the people of Ukraine, and one which evokes nightmares that the people of Europe fervently hoped had been consigned to a blood-stained history. Only dialogue and diplomacy offer escape from these nightmares. We call on Russia to end its aggression against Ukraine today, to turn away from war and choose the path of dialogue and diplomacy.
Yes, we can. If we unite our efforts, we can come up with strong, really strong response against Putin aggression.
Now, we saw stocks fall and oil prices rise in response to the initial invasion. What other short and long-term economic impacts do you think we can expect as the attack continues, not only in Ukraine and the surrounding areas, but around the world?
Well, it's of course, it will be a big economic damage, not only on Ukraine, however, for Ukrainians will feel it in a most dramatic way, but I think on the whole world. Even before Putin invaded, having 150,000 troops around Ukraine didn't help foreign investors to think that they should come to Ukraine and invest and keep their money and so on. Now, country is devastated, obviously. With energy, it's a particular also sphere where Europe is particularly vulnerable. Why? Because 40% of its energy resources are coming from Russia. For many years, Ukrainians, as other smaller countries like Baltic states, but also Georgia, Poland, have been talking about that we need to make sure that we are decreasing the dependency on Russia and restricting its monopoly on energy, bringing energy resources to Europe, because we know that Putin has been using gas, has been using energy as a geopolitical weapon, and now we can definitely witness it. Preceding this aggression, we have seen unprecedented gas deficit in Europe, and it was kind of a blackmail of Putin to certify Nord Stream 2. It hasn't happened, and we are grateful to our international partners for that. But still, now Europe and European people will feel it. So the message for the future, what can be done? What should we do? It has to be a long-term and comprehensive strategy to decrease our dependence on Russia on all of the fronts, on economic front, on energy front, on financial front. And here in particular, I'd like to mention a couple of measurements that still can be imposed. We can freeze all central bank Russia assets. It can be a next step in countering Russian aggression. We can also ban US, EU, UK pension funds buying Russian and Belarusian assets. We can restrict clearing Russian and Belarusian rubles.
And so, Svetlana, how quickly do you think the West can and will do those things? And how quickly would you like to see those moves made?
We see that it takes time. And this time, unfortunately, is working for Putin, not for Ukraine. After Putin invaded Georgia in 2008, after Putin annexed Crimea and Donbass in 2014, Ukraine well, everyone has seen what was happening, but there was not enough leadership. Not enough leadership and responsibility to respond to those aggressive actions. And I think that we are paying the price at the moment of that irresponsibility or complacency, or I don't know, maybe naivety, sometimes just electoral egoism when leaders are thinking within their electoral terms. But now we are paying with this, I've seen this title, Ukrainian crisis, Russia-Ukraine crisis. It's not Russia-Ukraine crisis. It's a world crisis, obviously. So sanctions have to be imposed as soon as possible, because they will buy time for Ukrainians to get stronger. They will buy time. They will put more pressure on Putin. What is very important here is rational calculation. We have to make it painful, not only for Putin himself and Lavrov and his generals, but also Russian population, who is at the moment restricted from media, from really freedom of speech. So if they will feel it, if they will feel this tangible pain from this action, they can become our allies because they will put pressure on his leader.
All right, Svetlana, we appreciate your time today and wishing you safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
And ABC News Live will continue with coverage of the Ukraine-Russia crisis in just a moment.